Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 304 of ReelBlend, a podcast that will only refer to the new movie as Bad Boys for Life. This episode is also brought to you by the number 4, as you will see if you're watching on YouTube. I've got my Fantastic Four hat. We are talking about Bad Boys 4 because the trailer dropped recently. This is episode 304, as mentioned. But in addition, our guest this week is Martin Lawrence and Wilson. No, I'm only kidding. We have Adam Wingard, who's joining us for Godzilla X Kong. Although my Warner Brothers rep told me they don't pronounce that. They're just saying it's Godzilla Kong, the New Empire.
I kind of want to see the ex-con version of Godzilla, like they do like a Con Air version, but they have all the monsters from the MonsterVerse on the plane, and they're all going to a prison, and then that would be amazing.
That would be pretty interesting. I would watch that, actually.
me too.
That's Kevin McCarthy of Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. Hello, Kev. How are you?
Hi, Jonathan. Hi, Gabriel. And we're obviously down Jake today, but Gabe's filling in, which we're excited about, and looking forward to the show.
Jake is only driving around in his brand new car. If anyone has followed him on social media, they'll see this beautiful new car that he has picked up, and now we can't get him out of it. So I guess he gets like a 3-month XM subscription. He's probably just
he couldn't tear himself away. He's just in there listening.
Get us on Sirius, Gabe. That would be really fun to stream the show.
Let me get a deal.
All right, good idea. That's Gabe Kovac sitting in the co-host chair. Hi, Gabe.
Hi. It's good to see you, boys. You know, it's a shame that your episode full of 4s only has 3 of us.
Yeah, that's true.
Bummer.
That's very true.
Bummer.
That's okay.
I blame Jake.
I do. If you're watching us on YouTube, hello. Thank you guys for joining us. Make sure that you go here every Friday morning when we drop a new episode. Give us a like and a subscribe. We appreciate the people who have been joining the show recently, thanks to a lot of our Dune 2 coverage. Hopefully you're going back through and listening to a lot of the archived episodes. We have a ton of really fun interviews that you guys can get to. If you're listening to us in audio format and want a video version of the show, go to youtube.com/ReelBlend podcast. Of course, the show is available everywhere you get your audio needs met. And if you would like, we even offer a premium version of the show. Sign up for ReelBlend Premium. It gets you an ad-free version of the episode every single week. And it also gets you a newsletter. So check the description for information on where to sign up. It's interesting that our guest this week, Adam Wingard, has his fingers in a couple of other pots. Kev, you remember when we got him, he was talking to us about Face Off 2. And then nothing really came about Face Off 2. He said it was the writer's strike that kind of delayed him from developing that story with his writing partner. And he's still kind of hacking away at it. The more we get further away from, I know you're always going to want to see it, but I'm feeling less and less interested about Face Off 2. Are you still gung-ho for it?
Kind of over it.
What if it had
a
DC tie-in and they called it 2 Face Off?
No,
Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah.
Him and Aaron Eckhart pop in there together. That'd be funny.
Yeah. They swap faces.
Dude, that's actually brilliant.
One of them is actually totally burned.
Yeah, exactly. The one guy gets the 2 bad faces.
My God.
And the other guy looks like Aaron Eckhart.
That's funny.
Poor Tommy Lee.
Well, we didn't get a chance to speak to Adam about the development of Face Off 2, but we did get into a lot of conversations about his current adventure in the MonsterVerse, lessons that he learned from working on Godzilla vs. Kong, a couple of things he got from influences from Godzilla -1, or just how those 2 projects almost bounced off of each other. And a terrific story about him having a toothache while working on Your Next, which is going to make me look at that movie completely differently. I'll let Adam explain it himself. This is Adam Wingard joining the ReelBlend podcast on behalf of his new film, Godzilla Kong, the New Empire. What's up, Adam? How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
We're good. I'm Sean. That's Jake. We are 2/3 of the ReelBlend podcast. Our friend Kevin can't be with us, but we're gonna pinch hit anyway. We're so happy to have you back on the show. Thanks for coming back on.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
So I got to start here, Adam, because when you take on one of these films, you have access to the archives of both of these legendary characters that have been on screen for years upon years. And I need to know if this is the first time we're seeing one of them deal with a dental emergency.
That's a great question. I think it is. I mean, and, for me, I'm always trying to find relatable things to juxtapose on a massive scale with the monsters. That's sort of the fun of it. And, I've always had terrible dental problems, growing up, and I've had all kinds of dental surgeries and stuff. So one of the first things I thought of doing is I wanted to know what a dental surgery would look like on a 300-foot tall monster. And I'll be honest with you, it was very cathartic for me to do this sequence because, for instance, when I did You're Next many years ago, I had a tooth problem during the entire course of the production, and it went through the whole post, and doctors couldn't figure it out. And so I was just in pure agony. I was when we were making the movie, I remember my friend had a dog who had just died, and they had these low level, pain tablets. And that's all I had to take to help my tooth problem.
You took animal painkillers?
I was dog painkillers, actually, I was afraid to take anything stronger because I didn't want to have anything that would, get in the way of, directing a movie. And so long story short, here we are with Godzilla and King Kong. And I was like, I've got my dental demons that I have to, get out. And that's what we did.
That was amazing. So not the answer I was expecting to that question at all.
Well, I can assure you none of my other answers lead towards taking dog painkillers.
That's why it's so detailed in the movie, though. Only someone who's been through that experience can bring the detail that you bring to the
Well,
sequence.
What's funny is I told my dentist about this sequence too, and she was so excited about it. I mean, she was like, and what's funny is she was like, because I was telling her, Kong's going to get a tooth pulled, and she was going through the full detail of what we should do in the movie if you actually had this problem. And it was so disturbing. I was like, you know what, we're going to go with a little bit more of the friendly, fun version of that. Because when she was walking me through the actual version, it was like, no, that doesn't sound fun. I'm not going to do that.
I really want to see the R-rated dentist cut of this movie.
Well, she even gave me a little book. It was a kid's book, and I can't remember what it was called, but it had these mice doing dental work in a human, and it was like, oh yeah, I see what you're going for. It's like,
oh my god, I know what book you're talking about. It's called Dr. Something, and yes. We read that to my kid. Yes. And the animals had to go get their teeth pulled, and he was a tiny mouse doctor who took their teeth out.
That's
oh my god, so, I wish I could remember the name of that book.
I should have looked it up beforehand, but yeah, that
Dr. Dentoid
my dentist helped inspire that.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Right now, Warner Brothers is going, what the fuck?
And they do that all the time with us.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Adam, years back, or actually, no, it was last year, I interviewed Bruce Campbell. And one of the nerdy questions I wanted to ask him was, whatever happened to Freddy versus Jason versus Ash? And he said one of the main reasons he ended up opting out was because there were so many rules about what Ash could and could not do to Freddy or Jason, or things that what the characters could do to each other. There are all these restrictions about how many times they could be hit, to what degree they could be hurt. I'm sort of curious, when you're working with two big franchise characters like this, are you given the same kind of rules? Are there certain numbers of times they can be hit, or how badly they can be hurt? Are there restrictions in that way?
Thank God, no. No, we... Toho has, some pretty definitive points about, certain mechanics of what Godzilla should and shouldn't do, but they're very open and versatile, actually, depending on the context within the movie. I can't think of any time that we ever took it too far in any kind of way. I don't really have a great answer for that, but yeah, fortunately it's not as, it's not like, you hear the stories about, the fast movies, like Vin Diesel and Jason Statham can't be hit more than a certain amount of times or whatever those stories are, it's not like that. 'Cause luckily, Godzilla and Kong, they don't have as big of egos, maybe. And, they're a little bit more laid back.
I'd love to know what is an example of a thing that is not allowed with Godzilla.
Let me try to think about that. Oh, well, you like in terms of the way, for instance, Godzilla emotes and things, like you would never, have Godzilla, smile at somebody necessarily. Now, there's certain things he can do that are interpretationally a smile, we actually got away with a little bit of one in Godzilla versus Kong, right after Godzilla shoots Kong in the back with his atomic breath. There's a moment where, you could interpret it as Godzilla's kind of laughing at Kong. But again, it had to be that type of thing where, you could interpret it different ways. That's one offhand that I can think of. Like there's certain, don't get me wrong. Toho has never given me a list of things. Sometimes I'll find out certain things that were tried in other Godzilla movies. And, Legendary will be like, well, they had a problem with this. I can't think of again. I know this sounds like I'm just dodging, but I actually can't remember any offhand. But it's never been a major problem, though.
Fair enough.
That actually leads perfectly into my next question, which is in this film, and it's already starting to get a little bit of buzz, the amount of time that you commit to having nonverbal scenes. And I would assume that when you have a human actor, it's much easier to coax reactions, and facial performances out of them by giving them notes and telling them, no, okay, we're taking away your ability to communicate. Show me more of this or give me more of that. But how do you give notes to a visual effects creature over long periods of time?
Well, it's a long process, but there is still a major notes process, and a lot of times that does go from in a performance way. I will say our effects teams are so good. Usually the notes process isn't around the performance. Like for instance, like Kong is somebody that, like, you look at the scenes with Weta, they know Kong up and down, and they do apes all day and have been for the last, 20 years of all different types. And so they really understand that sort of that vibe. So when it came to those characters, there's a whole process though, like the way that it's set up with me is, a lot of my post-production time is spent in a room with my VFX supervisor, Alessandro Angaro. And, we watch the footage back and, like if I want Kong to have his mouth closed here, but like kind of have a twinkle in his eye there, it's like, those are the kind of things we talk about and we develop it as we go.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Speaking of the effects, obviously we're just a couple of days out from Godzilla -1 winning the Oscar for special effects. And the fact about that blows my mind is that it's the first time in the 70-year franchise that this character, this series, has ever won an Oscar, which I don't really understand when you think about the impact that Godzilla has had on not just America, but worldwide cinema. I'm sort of curious what that win meant to you just as a fan of the character, and how is it possible that it took 70 years for the Academy to give a golden statue to this character in this series?
Yeah, it's kind of a testament to just how great of a job Yamazaki did. I mean, I was inspired even just from seeing the first trailer. I mean, we were pretty well into our post-production when we made whenever his trailer was released, and so that I saw that the first time that everyone around the world saw. But I will say it did inspire even one of our shots in it. Like there's a moment in -1 where Godzilla stomps down and the force of his foot is so powerful that it pushes the ground up in front of him, and it just it looks so great and powerful. And I remember we had a shot in the movie that we'd been working on for a while where Godzilla stomps on a building in a close-up, and it never had the force of impact that I felt like it needed to for such a big close-up. And it was only when I saw Godzilla -1, that trailer, where they had that moment where I knew what we needed to do. And I literally took my iPhone into the VFX supervisor's office and showed him that shot. And I was like, look, we just need to just completely rip off this shot. This is doing exactly what we're missing. And so we kind of, I'm not gonna say rip off, we paid homage to it for sure. And it's funny because we kind of did something similar on Godzilla versus Kong as well, not to go off subject, but there was a moment in that when we were in post-production in Godzilla versus Kong where the Top Gun trailer had just been released, and there's a shot. The famous shot in that trailer was when Tom Cruise, flies off the aircraft carrier and he kind of jolts forward as he goes off.
Yeah.
And I remember we had a full CGI version of a shot like that in the last movie with a pilot doing that. But what was funny is when we saw the Tom Cruise version, we were like, well, that's what that looks like. I mean, that's really him going off the carrier. And you see, like, there's no way you would have known that it would jolt you that hard when you fly off of it. And so, again, that was another one where there was a trailer and I showed the VFX team and I was like, we just need to do exactly this shot here. And so it's interesting, because things are always developing in that way. And but once a standard has been set, you can't go back from there. So as soon as you saw Godzilla's foot was so powerful that it pushed the ground up in -1, it's like, well, we can't step back from there. We've seen it, and you gotta continue it forward.
Love that.
It's a real shame we can't get Tom Cruise in the MonsterVerse somehow.
Yeah, you never say never, right? I mean, who knows?
That feels inevitable.
He would do it if he could actually physically fight King Kong or Godzilla. I think he would do it.
Godzilla versus Tom Cruise. I'd like to watch that.
Well, he did just enter a Warner Brothers deal.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's so funny. This is the second time today that Tom Cruise and Godzilla's come up, so maybe it's in there. It's in the zeitgeist. People want it. They want to see him run up his back or something.
Running up the back, running up his back.
I want to see that. Yeah.
There's something that you do in this film too, Adam, that I want to highlight, which is needle drops to classic rock songs. It feels like we haven't seen that in blockbusters in a really long time. It used to be something that was kind of a staple. Talk about bringing that back and your song choices for different moments in the film.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things really when planning out any movie is thinking and just dreaming up the different songs and music and the approach to the score and all those things. And so, Godzilla versus Kong was a really good kind of litmus test for what we could tonally get away with when it comes to the rock music and things. And, I'm a big Elvis fan. And even though we didn't use an Elvis song in this film, he was actually the inspiration for the very first song in the movie, which is a Jim Reeves song take on Welcome to My World. And the only reason I knew that song existed was actually because of the Elvis Presley version. But I couldn't use Elvis's version because he only did a live performance version of it. And so I went with the Jim Reeves because it's more polished and it kind of fits the environment.
Oh, that's interesting.
Kind of thing. But yeah, picking all the songs, and it's funny because certain songs worked really early on, and then as we started, continuing the movie, we just got more and more confidence, and it was like, well, maybe we should try a song on this scene because this would just amp this up, and and we kind of tried to stay within, for the most part, that late 70s, early 80s was sort of the vibe, and Trapper sort of became the starting point for queuing up the music, kind of almost creating a playlist that feels like something that Trapper created.
Gotcha.
Wow. Adam, I feel like one of the commonalities between a lot of the Versus movies, whether it be, Godzilla versus Kong, obviously, which we got years back, or Alien versus Predator, or Freddy versus Jason, which we were talking about, is that while you can make a really solid case as to who is the winner, the victor in each film, none of them does either of the characters ever actually die. And I'm sort of curious, kind of circling back to the idea of rules, is there a world in which Godzilla or Kong dies in this series, or is that ever a world in which you would ever want to be a part of? Would you ever want to put a period to the end of one of their storylines?
Dramatically, as the dramatic possibilities of that are super, I think, enticing as a filmmaker. I think for right now, it's been nice giving Kong a little break. I mean, he customarily he died in all of his movies for so long. It's like I remember I was at the New Beverly years ago after Kong Skull Island came out, and I was sitting behind somebody and they were talking about their experience of watching that film, and they're like, "Oh, I'm just so glad that Kong didn't die this time." It just she's like, I would have been so mad if he had, and it's just like. The man versus nature kind of story of the original King Kong has been told so well so many times. It's like, all right, let's give them a little break for a while. With that said, I mean, similarly with Godzilla, I mean, one of my favorite moments is of the entire Godzilla series and canon is Godzilla versus Destroya. And I'll tell you, like, whenever I was getting hired on Godzilla versus Kong, I wanted to go back and refresh my memory on all the Godzilla films, and I wanted to fill in the gaps of the ones that I hadn't seen, all 30 something of them. And over the course of just a couple of days, I started at, the original Godzilla, and I went all the way through, at the time, Shin Godzilla was just coming out, I think. Mm-hmm. And so I watched every single one. And, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I enjoyed some more than others. I'm a really big Showa fan. So those are the ones that really, hit hard for me. So when I got to the 1995 Godzilla vs. Destroya, I was a little burnt out, I was probably a little drunk, and but it gets to the ending of that movie, and there's the little junior Godzilla dies, and then Godzilla melts and dies at the end as well. And the music, the Ifukube music, was just so gorgeous and just effective. I was getting emotional. I mean, like, here I am. I've already watched, like, I don't know how many before that, but it's like 15, 20 Godzilla movies before that in a row. And, and I'm hit so hard emotionally by the care that they took in that film and the emotion that they put into it. And that movie has just such a summary, a feeling of like the end of an era, the way that he dies. And it's, it's just really well done. Long story short, it's like that, like it would be great at some point, if not saying that I would necessarily like kill Godzilla off or not, or nothing like that. But, I do think that like it would be fantastic to try to hit those heights of emotion when it comes to Godzilla as a character, because that type of vibe is something that I haven't really necessarily attempted with him yet. And I think there's lots of different ways to do it, and and there's lots of extremely sad, dramatic ways to do it. But yeah, I mean, like that is interesting to me. But I love the character so much. It's like killing them off would be it'd be hard for me too.
I am getting emotional just thinking about it.
Yeah, it'd be hard. I mean, but everything comes to an end, so at a certain point, that might happen, and so I wouldn't take that off the table.
Adam, I can't tell you how rewarding it is to hear you elaborate on that, because, and I swear to God, we're not promoting Tom Cruise, but I went and covered a Mission Impossible red carpet. And essentially when you get Tom Cruise on the carpet, you get one question, right? So I thought a long time, and I thought about whether he would ever want to play Ethan Hunt's death. Has he ever looked ahead to the one day where he might want to envision that and get to play with that dramatically? And I asked him that, and he looked at me and he goes, no. And that was it. That was his answer. And I was like, fuck.
I was there. I saw it happen.
So wow. To hear you actually contemplate the dramatic weight of it makes me feel so much better.
Yeah.
And also, it sucked because I was the person before Tom Cruise walked up and going, Sean, you got to ask this question. This is great. This is a great question.
It was not a great question. That makes
you wonder, like, I mean, because it's like, really, Tom, you never thought about it?
Right. At one point, it had to cross his mind. But
then again, that also adds up. I believe that a little bit too. So.
All right, I'll get you out of here on this one. You talk about a little bit of Kong, getting a break, and you've done 2 back to back. Do you see your future of just staying in the MonsterVerse for a little while, or are you going to take a break and head in a different direction? What's your immediate plan?
Well, I mean, the movie comes out in a couple of weeks, so we'll see. I mean, this is obviously the diplomatic answer I think you hear from a lot of filmmakers, but it's also realistic. It's let's see how the movie does. And, all signs points towards good. So, but, there's always unfinished business when it comes to this type of thing. I mean, like, whenever I was making this movie, I was like, crazy story back in 2021, right at the beginning of pre-production of this film. I was actually working on Face Off 2 at the same time as I was developing some of the artwork for this movie and the script. And I was over at Simon Barrett's apartment, and as I was crossing the road to go back home, a car ran a red light and actually struck me as I was going across the road. I ended up flipping over the car, blacking out. I broke I cracked my bone in my leg and bleeding everywhere, and near death experience completely. And even when I started this movie, I was in a cast. But when that happened, it was the first time that I ever really had such a close call, with death. And it was very inspirational to me in terms of my approach to this movie, because I was like, you know what, like, you might not get another chance at it. So if you're going to do, this movie, whatever the next movie, it's like, you got to really make it count. And so I put everything into this film just in case this is my last one. But because I didn't want to leave any regrets behind. So in a way, this is like my, potential mic drop for the MonsterVerse. But at the same time, it's like, there's so many things that I want to do, and I would love to come back on and potentially do another, but we'll just have to wait and see. I'm a wait and see type of guy.
Well, have you ever directed a movie where you weren't in physical pain, man? I feel so bad between the car wreck and the toothaches. I feel so bad.
Well, you know what? Like I always joke, I do my best work when I'm suffering. So, so that's why I felt like in a lot of ways, I suffered probably the most on Your Next when I had that tooth thing. And on this film, it was like, oh yeah, like, I'm in a lot of pain right now. That must mean that this movie is going to be really good.
If Adam's happy, it's a failure. Adam, we love having you on the show, man. Thank you so much for coming by.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, buddy.
Talk to you soon. We want to thank our good friends at Warner Brothers for getting Adam Wingard on the show. He's been a great guest and a terrific storyteller. I love that he treats the junket atmosphere as just a chance for him to open up and tell stories. Like, he's a great storyteller. He gets really personal about his stuff. When you guys get a chance to see Godzilla Kong this week, you will notice that starting off by asking him about Kong's toothache is on brand. It's a very big part of the movie. I promise you, that was not such a random question. It's actually a narrative point moving forward. And then, of course, it had Adam allowing him to sort of open up about his own oral surgeries, which, if anybody listens to the show and has been listening for a really long time, you might know that I have an issue with that. Like, I've got a tooth thing. That's my phobia.
Oh.
I can't deal with anything kind of tooth related. If people talk about tooth problems that they have, it puts visuals in my head I never mentioned this. Have I never brought that up on the show?
I don't know.
Sean, you can't handle the tooth.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
That's exactly.
And that's a beautiful tagline from
that movie. That movie was a horror film for him.
I don't know if I even watched it.
Exactly.
I don't think I've ever watched it.
Couldn't handle it.
Might be the best tagline of all time.
What was the Leave the World Behind, when that kid got bit by the tick and then his teeth started falling out?
Oh,
I couldn't do. That's like the ultimate horror film for me. So I really had a time with that. I had a really hard time with Godzilla Kong, The New Empire as well, too. We're going to transition into our reviews. This is going to be spoiler free. I still want people to go check it out if you want to. It's sort of a big splashy IMAX film. I had been sort of dropping hints at this, I think, in most recent conversations when we were praising things like Ghostbusters Frozen Empire for its, not that it avoided CG altogether, but it when it could go practical, it tried to. There were certain monsters and ghosts throughout Frozen Empire that were adorably kind of puppeteered and the full on proton packs and Ecto 1 actually racing through streets. And I was like, this feels like a nice throwback to 80s and 90s when everything wasn't green screen and CGI. And part of what was influencing that opinion was the fact that I got to see Godzilla Kong a couple of weeks ago in preparation for the Adam Wingard conversation. And I just had the hardest time investing in it. I just couldn't get into it because it just, for me, was wall to wall CGI. And it's heavy on Godzilla and Kong as major characters. And I guess that's what this franchise is evolving to. But this doesn't even feel like it's part of the same series that the Bryan Cranston, Elizabeth Olsen one was. That one, to me, at least felt like it was 80% humans And so when Godzilla showed up, it was a thing. You kind of sat up in your chair and paid attention, like, oh, now we're going to get some Godzilla scene. And this new film starts off in Hollow Earth. So it's all CGI and green screen, essentially. And it's Kong fighting off all these different creatures and just keeps escalating from there. So now it's like 85% CGI. And every once in a while, you get a human interaction. It's not enough for me. I just couldn't get invested into it. I literally felt like I was watching cut screens for a video game. And it's big and splashy and loud. The humans have nothing to do. That one actor, Dan Stevens, seems like he's having a good time with it. Like he legitimately.
I like Dan Stevens a lot.
And he's one of the scientists. He has to actually do oral surgery on King Kong in this. And that's a lengthy scene where he rides down
crane
on this hook. Yeah. It's like a giant hook that he's standing on. And I get that sounds fun, like while I'm describing it, but in watching it, it just wasn't, I couldn't, it was so flat to me. It was so flat.
I was so disappointed that I didn't get a screening here because I had heard your guys' early reaction. Jake had seen it too. And it was one of those things where, complete respect to your opinion, but knowing us having so many conversations about film, both your reactions, I went, I might like that. Like because of the way you feel it, for me, I'm hoping that it's gonna work as like just a big action cartoon, like Saturday night or Saturday morning cartoon type kaiju story. And for me, I feel like that's kind of the fun that I want versus, the Godzilla -1 aspect of it. That might be the other side of telling a Godzilla story, which is very human. So I'm curious to see it. Like I'm excited to see if I fall more in line with you or if it hits that sort of, this is fun popcorn. I just want to kind of escape into a theater during the summer. It's kind of vibe.
Yeah, I mean, for me, everything, and I haven't seen it yet either. And the reason why was I had a work conflict, but I think everything that Sean just said about the movie is exactly why I loved Godzilla -1. I mean, kind of to Gabe's point, the beauty of Godzilla -1 is that the human story is the forefront. Godzilla is a background character. I mean, the character is obviously heavily influencing the narrative of what these characters are going through. But at the same time, I found it more compelling to be sitting with the humans because the idea of the post-World War II and the idea of what the character's going through and the shame the character's feeling, there's a really, really brilliant human story there. And honestly, Godzilla is just the thing that's happening in the background that's affecting everything. But everything's narrative.
But I think it's okay that both exist. Like I think that's kind of fun for the Godzilla mythos is like it can be a big Power Rangers movie or it can be and it hasn't always been. I think Godzilla -1 is unique in that it was able to find such a human story.
My only pushback to that though is these bigger, splashier ones need a little more human story. And again, I don't mind it going full Fast and Furious and just kind of even though I do like the Fast and Furious drama and the characters, I think at the same time, like the problem I had with the Cranston Godzilla was that it wasn't human enough and it just didn't feel like the human balance was there. Like, for example, instead of going 99% Godzilla and 1% human, maybe do 75% Godzilla and 25% human. I mean, there's got to be a balance because Godzilla -1 is really more on the other side of that idea. You know what I mean?
Let me compare it to the other films in this franchise, though, because I understand the Godzilla -1 comparison, but that's like a series that well, not even a series. It's a movie that exists outside of this world.
Right.
And what I think the other movies in the MonsterVerse have been able to do so far, because when I got COVID in December, and one of the things I did was go to Max and rewatch all those movies, Kong Skull Island and Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Skull Island was really good. Did it hold up for you?
Yeah. No, I actually appreciated those movies more because I liked what they were doing with Monarch. I thought the Monarch angle of the mythology and the fact that these scientists were trying to figure out how to use the Titans to both like protect the planet and, guard the valuable resources of the planet. There was at least a lot more stuff of that sort of going on underneath the surface. So even Godzilla versus Kong, there was an element because of the mythology that was almost being brought by the Monarch series that I really wanted these movies to lean into more of. This one, and without getting into any kind of spoilers or plot, because I want people to go see it, doesn't do that as well. I just didn't think it doesn't always have to be a human element, but there has to be a story. You know, there's got to be something that we're driving to. And I've seen people sort of tweet this in their reaction to it. It's a lot of buildup for a big finale that doesn't mean much of anything. So I'll dance around that much and just say that even if you are a fan of the previous films, and you're hoping, and maybe you watched the Monarch show that was on Apple TV Plus, which again is developing more of that side of the mythology. I don't think this movie has as much of it.
I had never. Is it on Apple? It's on Apple TV Plus. Isn't it?
Kurt Russell.
That's weird. That's weird. I don't know. Why is that not a Max?
Why is that not a Max thing? Right?
It just occurred to me. I hadn't really thought about it.
Good question. I think out of all the more recent Godzilla films, I think Skull Island is hands down the best.
Well, Skull Island is I mean, I don't know how to put this without sounding pretentious. Skull Island is really trying to be a film, like if that makes sense. Like Skull Island, like he had a lot to say about like the Vietnam War, and I think when you tie Godzilla to the idea, whether it's a war or Godzilla is obviously tied to World War II, and there's something to say, and not necessarily political or controversial to say, but you're trying to say, like you guys are saying, a human story. It can do so much, but I do think that both can exist. Again, I haven't seen this movie, so this is. But having seen sort of the more popcorn Godzillas, I think they both can exist as one is fun and let it be fun. The other is, wow, you can really use this fun atmosphere, create something compelling. And I think Kong Skull Island is a great example of that as well.
And that's a bit of what Jordan Peele's been doing, right? Like when Jordan Peele does his horror films, they are not like, yes, they are traditional horror films, but he has a message to start off with.
They work on both levels. I mean, that's why he's a master. It's like someone can go and they can just get a popcorn vibe out of it. Mm-hmm. And then you can go again and go, oh, this is so much more going on. I mean, that's why Peele is, one of them.
And Nolan does similar stuff like Inception and all those kind of things. They're popcorn, big movies, but they have so much more layered.
And I certainly don't mean to say how come more filmmakers aren't reaching the level of Jordan Peele and Christopher Nolan. I understand these are unicorns.
Wait, Kevin, are you saying that Jordan Peele has a lot of layers to his movie?
Oh,
nope. Actually, I think when I interviewed him for Get Out, I think he said to me he was going to peel back layers.
Oh, wow.
I could be wrong on the wording, but I remember him making some kind of joke about that, but I could be wrong.
Then he clinked the spoon in his cup and Kevin started to, one tear went down Kevin's cheek. All right, so that's your option at the theaters. Earlier this week, and on the day that we are recording, we got a chance to see the trailer for an upcoming June release, of which Kevin and I are extremely excited for, and we're winning Gabe over to our side. It's called Bad Boys for Life. And Part 2. It's actually it's title. Called Bad Boys Ride or Die. And I'm just never going to get over the fact that they botched that. It's going to bother me to no end. But
it should be Bad Boys, the Three of Life. There you go. That'll be the
directed by Terrence Malick. So
a
huge part of the reason why I'm all in on this one is Bilal and Adil, the directors, who just unapologetically are Michael Bay fans. Who are going to carry the torch of Michael Bay through this action franchise. And I described this one in our text thread based on this trailer alone as legitimately just a mixtape of the first three movies. And while that might sound like a critique or a detriment, that's part of the reason why I'm fully in on this. Like the way people feel about the Fast and Furious franchise or the Transformers franchise, where they just want more of what it promises. That's all I want. I want more of what the Bad Boys franchise promises, which is Will Smith and Martin Lawrence playing off of each other. The colorful supporting characters. If you've watched the trailer, they figure out a way to bring back Joey Pants, albeit briefly. Reggie, the son-in-law now is back.
The best.
So it just looks incredible. Like the action looks great. It looks like big splashy visuals. It shows the guys having to go on the run. So they're fugitives from the law. So there's going to be an element of that mixed in. But there's legit shots that are taken directly out of the previous films. I mentioned in the text thread, Will Smith running with his shirt off is an homage to that sprint in the first Bad Boys where he's chasing after the villain and they go through that sort of Point Break-esque foot chase scene. There's of course the very famous, the two of them standing up and in slow motion, the camera swirls around them, and Bilal and Adil of course just paid homage to that multiple times.
I mean, they did it. But that's probably my favorite moment in the last one is that they Michael Bay shot Michael Bay. Like that's the coolest thing they did. That's the coolest thing they did. It's
the greatest. And the fact that they even had the thought to come up with that proves that these guys. And I'll tell you, here's a random comment before I throw it over to you guys too. This makes me want to see their Batgirl even more.
I know. I
can't even imagine what that movie is, and we will never know for sure. But yeah, I'm 100% in on this, and I think it's going to be fantastic. Kev, I assume your excitement level is additionally through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, Bad Boys 2 is one of my favorite movies ever. It's one of my favorite action movies of all time. I've seen it well over 20, 25, probably 30 times. I mean, I remember seeing it in theaters. You're more of a Bad Boys 1 guy. I'm more of a 2. 2 just hit me at the right time. This reminded me of how 2 felt.
Yeah.
There's a specific moment in this trailer where Martin Lawrence and Will Smith I guess they're in some kind of like 7-Eleven type convenience store, and he's like talking about the hot dogs and the Skittles, and the way they're framing Martin Lawrence's face reminded me of him looking in the fish tank in Bad Boys 2 when he's on the drugs and they go to Joey Pants's house. I also thought it was really clever how they brought back Joey Pantoliano, because. And even in this trailer, he's
guest of the show, right? We had him on for that.
Yeah, we did have him on.
He's fantastic.
Yeah, a little shameless plug. If you're a fan of The Matrix, he tells a great story about eating the steak and shooting that scene. And I think like Keanu Reeves, like didn't they come to watch him shoot that or something? It was really kind of a cool story. But Joey Pantoliano is one of the big parts of why Bad Boys is so funny, because his comedic timing with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith. One of my favorite moments in Bad Boys 2 is when they go into the office after the whole bridge chase, and like Will's like, yeah, you see there, and like the cars are just like flipping, and Joey's doing the woo-sa. And so I guess spoiler alert if you haven't seen Bad Boys 3, but Joey Pantoliano dies in that film, and so the trailer for the new one, you're seeing older footage of him. And he says in the trailer, this is not a spoiler, he goes, now, by the time you're watching this, you know I'm dead. And so he kind of still has a presence with the characters. And I love that he's still cursing and like criticizing Will and Martin.
It wasn't until I watched that trailer a second time that I realized that there was no red band warning at all.
I had the same thought. Yeah. I was like, wait, can you do that in a regular trailer?
They were just dropping F-bombs left and right. And I was like, oh, wow, this is okay.
Yeah. It was awesome. And also like again, the classic shots, the swirling around camera, it feels big. The production value feels absolutely incredible. Like the action does not feel super CG heavy. It feels like it's really being done to a T. And I'm very excited about it. I was worried about the title. I do like the title. We all know that they missed the opportunity. I don't think they knew they were going to make a fourth one. So clearly they didn't. They could have done Bad Boys Ride or Die and then For Life for this one. But I don't know that they knew the third one was going to be so successful. And so
you know
clearly,
what though, Kev? This is their Bad Boys 2. This is their second one.
Yeah. And Bad Boys 2, people talk about how long Bad Boys 2 is. I love every single like action set piece in that film. And I think Martin Lawrence and Will Smith as Mike Lowry is one of his best performances of his career. Yeah. It's such a great character. When you meet Will Smith in real life, he's nothing like Mike Lowry. Will Smith has a very different demeanor in terms of the way he carries himself. Sure. Mike Lowry is a fully realized character. And I think it's really interesting, like the mythology and the storyline behind their friendship, the whole idea of Martin Lawrence wanting to quit in Bad Boys 2 and Will keeping him. It's really just kind of and the Reggie thing to me, now in the full circle of where we are, was in 3 when they brought back Reggie, and now he's here. So yeah, I'm very fascinated to see how they play with it.
That made me laugh the hardest. He's like, you need to get a job. He's like, I'm a U.S. Marine. He's like, then you need to be deployed.
Which is so ridiculous.
It's just great. Let me ask another question though. Is Will Smith out of movie jail? Is he just going to keep going?
I think he's just in academy jail.
Is he in academy jail?
I don't know. I never really heard about him stopping. Like, wasn't he doing a press tour for a movie like right after that?
When that happened, when that slap happened, right? We all had legitimate conversations about like, man, is his career done? And he's back with a franchise. He's back with a massive franchise. I guess we'll see how it does. We'll see if the audience is affected at all by it. But it's interesting. It's interesting how we as a society, process stuff. And that was the biggest story of our careers at the time, and now he's back to doing Bad Boys and everyone's rolling with it. So I'll be curious to see what the overall effect is, because we don't have a ton of movie stars left like that. We don't have people who can still carry a movie. And I think Will Smith, regardless of how he behaved that night at the Academy, is still viewed as a movie star. Who
do you think? And this is like an
picture.
inside baseball. Do you think he does a full press tour? Like, that's what I'm really curious about.
That's interesting,
because very famously, like if you do a full press tour and you're talking to dozens, if not more, people.
Yeah.
The reason why you see these megastars that dip out of that is because they get asked the most uncomfortable question. Like they're going to be asked the most uncomfortable question. Whether he should
help me with the timing. Was Bad Boys 3 before the Oscar incident?
Yes,
I think so.
2019.
Okay.
Was it his Apple? Was it after that? Was it his Apple TV
Emancipation?
Movie with Emancipation. That's right. With was it Fuqua that did that? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he did some press for that, but very limited.
That's what I thought. Yeah,
he did very limited press. I assume he and Martin Lawrence will do a junket for this. I assume they'll get out there and talk, unless they do controlled appearances.
It's just going to be Oscar questions and Batgirl questions, that whole junket.
Oh, God, I didn't even think about that, too. Bilal and Adil having to deal with that nonsense. I take it back. Maybe they're not going to do a junket at all. No, but you know what?
I think it'd be cool if they just came out and talked about it.
The Oscar question is a little old. We have this conversation a bunch of like, do you feel like you have to ask fill in the blank at this point? And I don't even know if you're going to get him to say anything that's interesting about the Oscar question.
As far as press, I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see.
It's going to be a big summer. It's going to be an interesting summer. Let's start to a really quick break. And on the other side, we're going to be talking about the new film Immaculate. And we're going to get into spoilers. We told you guys last week, your homework for the week was to go see Immaculate. We had a conversation with the director that hopefully you've listened to by this point. Kevin and I are going to talk about that wild ending and maybe the future of Immaculate sequels on the other side. So earlier this week, we had director Michael Mohan on the show, and he was talking to us about Immaculate. And this was a great conversation. I hope you guys got a chance to see the movie before you listen to it, because we told them right off the bat we were going to get into full-on spoilers for the film. And by that, we kind of mean the third act. There's just so much going on in this third act. And he brought up something in the conversation that I didn't even think about, which is the idea of them potentially going after the other spikes for the DNA that are on the spikes that are through the other hand of Jesus and the feet of Jesus, which is kind of borderline fascinating. Like when we got into the aspects of Jurassic Park and taking the DNA off of that, I'm kind of blown away. I guess I should wait. Hold on. Let me preface all this by saying this conversation is going to continue. Spoilers for Immaculate. I think I kind of made that somewhat clear up front. But you probably want to punch out if you haven't watched Immaculate yet. And please go see Immaculate, because that and another horror film that Kevin's going to bring up right before we punch out of this are worth your time and kind of a nice revival of the horror genre at this point. Back into spoilers. I'm kind of blown away that nobody's come up with the concept of using the DNA of Jesus somehow to bring back a new version of Jesus. All of these horror films go immediately to the devil and satanic possession and the exorcist and exorcism. How come no one's gone the other direction? How come no one has thought of the idea of resurrecting Jesus? I thought that was the most creative idea inside of Immaculate. That concept blew me away. Am I alone on an island in that way? Or is that something new to you guys as well, too?
Yeah, no, it was shocking. And like, I think the ending of this film is one of the more shocking endings I've seen in cinema in a long time. And we talked a lot about this with Michael, the filmmaker, who's our bonus guest, I think, this week. And so definitely it's something to dive into. There's a lot of topics that this film dives into. It's affecting a lot of people. People are talking about it online. But yeah, no, it felt unique in the genre in a way.
The part that he talks about and has such a great understanding of is the length that was needed of this being, if it were 5 minutes longer, he'd have lost your interest, or if they shaved 5 minutes off of it, it might not have been as effective as it is. We argue a lot that, the whole Ebert quote that there's no bad movie that's too short and no great movie that's long enough, essentially. And that's what I thought Immaculate did. Like, Kev, if I go back over and think about the different scenes from it, like there isn't a drag at all. There isn't a moment where I'm not trying to figure out like, what is the central mystery going on here? And then when the reveal hits, you're on a freight train, you know, till the end, to the final scene. And there's so much talk about that final scene, but I swear to you, and here's the thing, this is a little bit distracting, and I don't know if how you experienced it. But I knew about the oneer before seeing the ending of it. So I, in my head, was constantly thinking, only for the last 5 minutes, is this the start of it? Is this the start of it? And then there would be a cut and I'd be like, oh, okay, this isn't the start of it. That's just my own weird brain, you know, the way that it's kind of operating. So I kind of wish I didn't know. But then once it starts, you realize, oh, okay, never mind. This is what everyone's been talking about.
Yeah. And when you stay in a wonder, we talk about this a lot on the show. I mean, like this is across all genres, horror, action, everything. That's why the John Wick films are so effective, because when you stay in a wonder, you create a non-safe environment for the audience. There's no safety. There's no cut. There's no way of like getting us out of it. Like we have to remain with that character while they're going through what they're going through. And I
especially
think
this one in particular, this one specifically, being
because it's a
Sydney.
wonder, and the scream, it was the first take, and how she did it. I was particularly shocked by that last sequence, and I love that Michael explained to us in our bonus episode interview about the different versions of that scene that they were told to do from the financiers, because they wanted it to be a little more obvious versus the subtlety and the nuance. And we all know that subtlety and nuance generally speaks more volumes than seeing things. I always use the example of Seven. And why that movie horrifies me, because we don't see a lot of what the actual murders are. We see the aftermath per se, or they talk about it. And so I think the beauty of what we learned in that interview is that let a filmmaker tell you why this is going to work better. When you work in nuance and you work in subtlety, you're speaking more of a universal language than just exploding visuals on a screen with an audience, so that they can like be spoon fed the information.
Well, and as we talked about with Michael too, I found it really interesting that they tried different sounds, because to me, it's the sound. Like, yes, Sydney's performance in that moment is riveting. Yeah, but it's what you hear and don't see. And for him to talk about the fact that they used like a braying goat, you know, almost, and that it elicited laughs, you know, from the audience. It's so interesting that these are crucial decisions that get made along a production's lifeline kind of thing. Right. And they could have put any kind of sound in there, because what's essentially being born is something that's not of this world, kind of, right? It's something so supernatural that you almost can't like pull up the soundboard and be like, give me the sound of this sort of thing. Yeah. So you have to play around with different things. And kudos to him for recognizing that last minute changes have to be made in order for him to really get there's certain filmmakers that might have held strong of like, no, this is what I'm going to ride with. And so he seems really open to collaboration and really open to feedback from all the people who are on his team. I got that from him, a sense of him as well too. I do kind of want to emphasize a little bit stronger for people who listened to his interview, that he was getting the feedback that people want him to do sort of gonzo weird movies, like because the last 10 or 15 minutes of this one goes so gonzo. And not that I'm saying that that's going to be a bad thing, but I almost, and I said this to him, I was like, I don't know, man, the restraint of the first hour and 15 is what made that last 15 so worthwhile. If he hits the ground running, maybe he has an idea that can sustain it, you know, but it's almost like I wouldn't want to see him just throwing everything against the wall right off the bat. I think you have to, the fact that he took the time to build out the character and the fact that he took the time to ramp up, like you spent a lot of time talking to him about that suspenseful run that she does. Yeah. Like that feels something because you understand how bad the situation is that her character is in. So when she's running and you don't see the people over her shoulder, you start to think for a second, like, oh my God, is she going to get away? And it's only when those guys come into frame that you realize like, she's going back for even worse conditions now at this point.
I love that, because in the trailer, I thought in the trailer they show her get caught. So I thought that was cool that in the movie, if you hadn't seen the trailer, that she might be getting away, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, it's a terrific film. Go see Immaculate, please. I know it's just very strange that this is Easter Sunday, but still, it's in theaters. It's definitely worth checking out. And so is another film that's been on my radar that I'm really, really excited to see. I have a screener link for it. I love David Dastmalchian. Kevin, I'm going to ask you to please don't mention any spoilers, because at this point, I haven't seen a trailer. I don't know any of the details. I just know that people are talking about, is it with Late Night with the Devil? Mm-hmm. All right.
And so, what? Okay, so I will be very vague. Late Night with the Devil, the concept basically is it's a late night talk show host. His ratings are suffering, so he decides to do some really crazy devil exorcism type of things on his show to bring ratings to the show. What is brilliant about the movie is the way it's formatted. Essentially, you're kind of in real time. And instead of going to commercial breaks, you go behind the scenes in black and white while he's dealing with what happened just on air. And so the whole concept is push-pull of you wanting to get back to the show, but also being interested in what's happening behind the scenes with the producers. This is my favorite film of the year, hands down right now. I haven't seen a better film this year.
That's wild. That's a big, bold statement.
The filmmaking is remarkable. It is like the timing.
This is the one that Stephen King tweeted about, right? And said it was great, like before it came out.
Yeah, David Dastmalchian is absolutely incredible. He does a great job as like a late night host. It takes place in Halloween 1977. It is legitimately horrifying, but also emotionally horrifying, but at the same time visually horrifying. So you find yourself completely emotionally invested in the horror in a way that when the film ends, you're just like in pure shock. I texted you guys the minute the movie ended. I have been thinking about this movie since it ended. David is phenomenal. The two filmmakers who made this film, I think they're brothers. They're absolutely incredible. And Cameron and Colin, I believe their names. I could be botching that. But they're absolutely phenomenal storytellers, and it's really well executed. A lot of cool aspect ratio changes that change the environment of where you are and the shots and the situation.
Cameron and Colin Cairns?
Yep, that's it. That's them. So I will keep it at that. I won't spoil anything else. I will just tell you, like Sean said, don't read up anything. There's a lot of shock in it, a lot of emotional shock, and just like it is definitely a movie that will sit with you for a long time. It's my favorite movie of the year so far.
Question, and this can just be yes or no. You don't have to get any more details because I think that was good. You mentioned it takes place during Halloween. Is it one of those kind of movies that I'm going to enjoy watching around Halloween? Does it like feel like a Halloween season outside of just being a horror movie? Or is it just kind of, it's a detail of that's the day?
It's a detail because of the thematics of the movie, but also the audience is dressed up.
Okay, cool.
So
That's
it's kind of
watching Halloween. Like a part of the experience for me is seeing people in costumes, seeing the fall weather. Like it's all a part of the ambiance. Yeah. So I was curious if it takes advantage of that. That's cool.
Yeah, but I loved it. I'll keep it at that. Yeah,
I'm gonna bring up the two brothers who directed Talk to Me. Also, we're getting sibling co-filmmakers who are dabbling in the horror genre. Yeah, Danny and Michael Filippo, I believe. Filippo.
Yeah, they were great. Yeah.
Go see Talk to Me if you haven't seen that yet. So, it's a little high time of horror, essentially, where some really great titles are reaching us. So we're recording this on Tuesday, and it's funny. We make jokes about how right as we do the show, something big will generally happen. We saw that there's going to be a tease for the new Yorgos Lanthimos film that he's making with Emma Stone, which, surprise, surprise, is coming to theaters much sooner than we anticipated, with them coming off of Poor Things and the Oscar run that went on. So the new film is called Kinds of Kindness. From what we understand, Wednesday is when the trailer is going to drop. So as your call to action this week, head to the comments down below. Let us know what you thought of the new trailer. Now that it's dropped, I have no idea what to expect from this. I don't know what the movie is about at all. I just literally know that it's Yorgos and a lot of the cast members. I think Defoe is in this as well too, and Emma Stone is coming back as well too for it. So let us know in the comments what you thought about that one. In the meantime, got a bunch of episodes you guys need to go catch up on. We have bonus episodes. We have old films that are coming around to home entertainment, DVD, digital. So go back through and find our archives. You can follow the show on social media. Jake Hamilton, who is not with us this week, is at Jake's Takes. Kevin is, of course, Kevin McCarthy TV. I'm at Sean _O'Connell. Producer Gabe is at Gabe Kovac, and the show itself is at ReelBlend. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. And until then,
Dunkirk.
We're going back to
bringing
Dunkirk.
that back. Going back to Dunkirk.
What do we got this year? What do we got this year? What do we?
I feel like we need something.
This year?
Right? There's gotta be.
Ooh.
Okay.
I like that.
Magnolia.
There will be blood.